The deficit and debt an independent Scotland will start out with will be derived from and influenced by the overall UK position. In the case of debt, it will also be determined by negotiations that follow a vote for independence. As was established in 2014, Scotland would not have legal responsibility for UK debt. We do, however, in my view, bear a moral responsibility.
Certainly, I was very concerned to see that the paper actually puts an obligation on an independent Scotland to accept part of the UK debt. I see that as very totally unnecessary, and even if we ended up in that place, you should not start negotiations by accepting that you're going to take on that liability. It's a very weak position to take. Well, we have no obligation under, as I understand it, international law to accept any part of the UK debt. We're an independent country. We didn't incur any of that debt in our own right.
If you start off accepting it, does that not mean that so that you also, it follows on from that you also get your share of the assets?
If you look at the Treasury paper published in 2013, because the UK already at that time of the previous referendum issued a statement about what they saw happening, and in international law there's two models. There's what's called the continuing state model, and then there's the state disintegrates and you have completely new states for everything. So when the Soviet Union disintegrated, the Russian Federation was the continuing state, and then everybody else was a new state. So Russia took the UN seat, and it took the debts of the Soviet Union, and it took all the assets like military bases abroad, embassies, and things like that. And then everyone else got what was in their country. So that's the normal continuing state model. When the UK Treasury issued its statement, they said they were going to take the continuing state model by which they kept all the assets, the UN seat, embassies, military bases, the Falklands, and all of that sort of stuff. But they would then apply the dissolution model to the liabilities, so that Scotland would have to take a share of the liabilities but not the assets, which obviously that's having your cake and eat it model.
How would you approach negotiations, and what would you say to them?
What I would say is we go with the continuing state model, which is what they want. We don't need the basement of the British Embassy in Washington. We get our own embassy. The one exception that we will make is we will take off their hands the enormous liability of the UK state pension system. And so we, as of Independence Day, for everyone who is domiciled in Scotland on Independence Day, the Scottish Government will take over the state pension lock, stock and barrel, possibly civil service, military pensions and things like that as well, just for simplicity. And in return for that, they get to keep the national debt.
In light of that, and indeed our desire for strong future partnership between Scottish and UK governments, we would seek a fair settlement on both debt and assets. Now, given the turmoil engulfing the UK's finances at this time, it is not possible to make an estimate of our starting fiscal position, though the IFS has suggested that in 2022-23, Scotland's deficit is likely to be similar to or lower than the UK's.
GERS is complete rubbish in terms of what the finances of an independent Scotland are going to be, but I expect that we would probably end up with a deficit in the first year or two of maybe between 8 and 10% of GDP.